Well, we finally got a trailer for the Elden Ring DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree. It looks like it was about a year since we initially found out about this, um, and basically 2 years after the game's release. So finally having a trailer after all this time is really cool. This video is gonna basically just me going off the cuff, discussing what I see from the trailer, my general thoughts about it, my hopes for the DLC, um, any potential grievances I have. And again, that's probably very small. This is, spoiler alert, this is absolutely amazing, what we're seeing on the screen here. Um, but also, I'm going to try to, discuss kind of what I think might happen, what these things that we see in the trailer might be. A lot of this is kind of speculation. I don't have all the answers, and no one really does. And I really hope that on some level, all of our predictions are wrong and that we are completely surprised. There are definitely some things that we can mostly agree and see being the same thing, or likely being the same thing. So we'll talk about those things. We'll talk about the more kind of bizarre things as well as the more obvious, overt characters, places, um, battles, whatever have you, that we see throughout this trailer. So essentially, what I'll do is kind of just break this down frame by frame or scene by scene, discuss what I see, as well as kind of end on some closing thoughts, what I hope that we see, and also what um, we probably will get. I've read the interviews with Miyazaki that were recently released around the time of the video trailer. I've watched quite a bit of people's reactions or interpretations. Um, Again, I think that there are a lot of interesting ideas that I agree with, and there are quite a few that I don't necessarily agree with, and we'll talk about that stuff shortly. But this isn't really a reaction video. I've probably watched this at least 20 times now, and still, every time I'm watching this, I find something new that I didn't see before. There's just so much packed into what, is basically a 3 minute gameplay trailer. Um, and right away I pre-ordered it. I got the statue and everything. I'm just really looking forward to not only having that but just getting the game. It's so much sooner than I thought it was. I actually thought it was going to be um, later in the year. I was thinking it might be September or something like that, but it looks like it's going to come sooner than at least I had expected. But anyways, let's dive into this. Again, a lot of this stuff is off the cuff. It's going to be a little ranty, but if you like that stuff, if you like any of my thoughts, feel free to take some time to check out my other content. I'm starting to branch out into Elden Ring from software esque stuff. I have some pretty wacky theories, so if you're interested in that kind of stuff, feel free to subscribe or check back later throughout these next coming weeks as I finally am starting to build this channel. But again, the fact that you're here and interested in anything I have to say or interested in more sort of speculation and ideas on the trailer is really appreciated. So thanks for stopping by here. And yeah, let's get into this and see what we can see from, again, a extremely dense and jam-packed 3 whole minutes. Okay, so these first few frames or this first scene, it's probably no surprise that what we're seeing here is essentially the corpse or cocoon of Mikola that was taken by Moog. And so it looks like we're actually going to enter from this location to some extent. That seems pretty obvious here. This is probably the one thing that I'm not as thrilled about because I feel like it's so um, predictable. In this case, again, it's just a small nitpick, but I was actually hoping that it would be something different just because everyone was saying, oh, this is where we're going to enter in the DLC. It's going to be in Moke's Palace, next to the corpse of Mikola, and it looks like that's where we're going to end up being. So it's definitely one of those things where the community was speculating on this, and it turns out they're pretty much right. Again, it's not that big of a deal, but it is kind of like, oh, I was hoping that it would be maybe something different, just to kind of throw off the expectations and really surprise the players. But that looks like what we're seeing here is essentially that we start the DLC from Mikola's resting place, or his cocoon, I should say. And then what kind of comes up next is this scene where the player characters running towards this city center. It kind of looks like Lanedale, but again, completely different motifs with the little gravestones that we kind of saw in the original announcement image. What I really like, and I'll talk about this throughout the whole trailer, is that visually it looks really distinct from the base game, but still is sort of close enough in sort of visual style to where it still feels very Elden Ring, which I really like, but it's also pushing the boundaries. And you'll kind of see my thoughts on this as well throughout the trailer, that it's a lot of these bosses and areas are just so visually impressive, appealing, wacky, terrifying. There's some of these bosses look absolutely scary as shit. So kind of seeing that sort of visual appeal, but again, that still has that relationship to the base game is really, really cool. So for this next kind of batch of just faster shots, these to me look like NPCs. Maybe that guy that has the pot towards the second or third NPC shown probably might be a merchant. A lot of people have been saying that gold disc or circle, half circle kind of thing might be a great rune. I don't think it's a great rune, just kind of based on the texture. It's kind of a more solid color, whereas the great runes kind of have like this rocky kind of almost texture to them, where they're kind of jagged. So I don't think it's a great rune. It might be just something that kind of shows up in the nighttime cycle. Again, that kind of looks like a night scene or like an underground type environment, maybe perhaps. Um, but I don't think it's a great rune. It's probably just maybe something that pops up during the nighttime cycle, or just is kind of a motif of that location, kind of similar to those spectral trees that show up in the mountaintops of the giants. So again, could be a great rune. Probably not. But overall, a lot of these NPC armors look really, really cool. So hopefully we can grab those or use some of the weapons, or maybe we have to, take out those NPCs if we really want the armor, or whatever the case may be. Maybe they're even invaders, NPC invaders. So that would be really cool too as an option. So um, we'll see, because they kind of have the narrator, at least in a lot of these, has this sort of like competitive tone. It's like all these NPCs kind of want the same thing, or have the same goals in mind, or whatever the case may be. So I really hope we get more NPC depth, besides obviously having cooler armors and stuff like that. But just I think what the base game could really have added more of is just simply more NPC encounters. So I hope that we get definitely more story through those regular NPC counters, that are, again, really easy to spot, and aren't so hard to trigger or find. So I really do hope that we get more NPC reactions throughout the DLC. A lot of people have been saying that this character is some kind of relative or related to Renala, this person that has sort of a similar garb to the Carrion inverted statue hourglass thing item. I can see the similarities there, but again, I think this may not even be a magic person. This might be a sleep magic person that's completely not related to the Carrions at all. Again, it it's such a short shot with that particular character. It's hard to say, but I don't think it's Renala's relative or Renala herself. And to be honest, it's kind of hard to tell the gender of that particular character. They seem kind of androgynous in some ways. There's really, again, the shots are really quick, so it's really hard to tell because I think there's kind of some qualities of both. Maybe that's even a motif, is that a lot of the characters like Mikola are sort of can sort of embody typical stereotypical qualities of both genders, whatever the case may be, or, have that kind of multifaceted nature. So but I think overall that this character is probably not Renala or related to her or the Carians or the Academy in any sort of way. Okay, and the next up is this shack or house. It's probably connected to this Deathblight swamp. We've kind of seen through the interviews that there will be a swamp here. It's probably some kind of Deathblight swamp thing. That environment kind of reminds me of the village of the Albinaurics under the Cathedral of Manicelis, that whole sort of separate elevated area in Liurnia from the base game. That's kind of what it reminds me of. That painting that was shown too might be inside of that shack or that hut that was at the top of that cliff in that swamp. And it looks like it contains two figures that have kind of been of debate. A lot of people have been saying that it's Morgott. I don't think it's Morgott in that picture. Again, we'll kind of come back to that guy later. I think it's someone completely different. He kind of has the same look as Morgott when he's sort of de-omenized, when he doesn't have the horns anymore and when you beat him. I think that it's probably a completely new character. Maybe it is an omen, and I'll kind of discuss those ideas later. The woman, I've seen people say it looks like Saint Trina. It's Fia. She's pregnant. She's not pregnant. I'm of the mind that it's probably someone completely new. Maybe it's even the woman that was, presumably a woman that was shown at the very first start of the trailer. Maybe it's the woman narrator at the end of the trailer that, kind of gestures or beckons the player to touch the withered arm, to touch the cocoon or whatever. So again, that she might be a new maiden, a new guide, but I don't think it's Saint Trina either, because if you look closer, the hair of hers is kind of more of a brunette than a blonde or a fairer haired individual. And I think from the depictions of both Mikola and Saint Trina, you imagine sort of this golden or almost white haired person. And well, obviously it's Mikola at the end. There's no doubt about that. But I think for that particular person in the painting, it's probably not Saint Trina or Fia either. Again, I can't really tell if she's pregnant or not. I think that she just could be just resting her hand on her side, posing like if you were to, have somebody paint a picture of you. You have to stand posed for the painter to paint you properly. So I don't know about the whole pregnancy thing, but definitely the man in the photo, the older individual, does show up again. We'll talk about that shortly. So these next few shots, again, just different environments, not too much to go off of there. Castle looks beautiful. If you'll notice, the castle kind of has that crumbling Fair Missoula vibe at the very top where the pieces are kind of floating in midair. Looks really cool. I really like that design. It almost kind of looks like Stormvale, but kind of has this different vibe to it. And that's what I was saying earlier, is that a lot of the architecture and the visual elements are really familiar, but it just has like this little tinge to it that's really interesting, where it still feels fresh, it still feels new, in this sort of different shadow realm that is described here. So that might be the main, or one of the main legacy dungeons. I hope that, again, we're seeing legacy dungeons on the scale of Langdell or Stormvale, where they kind of, large, different levels of verticality, lots to uncover, stuff like that. So I hope that a lot of these legacy dungeons, including likely that castle, kind of have that same vibe going for them. And then I think just, again, we're just seeing different enemies, here. I don't think there's really much to say about these alternative worm face people. I think that's just an enemy. it's the only thing significant I can see there is that, again, we're kind of seeing more of a day-night cycle. Maybe that's a night, what the night looks like in the Shadow Realm. Maybe, again, that might be an underground area underneath the Shadow Realm too. We'll talk about that later. Um, but overall, the one thing that probably stands out to me there is simply the castle and just kind of hyping us up for um, new cool enemies to get beaten to a pulp, or in this case, like literally sucked and eaten by them, and or new things to to fight. So again, really cool enemy shots there. And then kind of rounding out that enemy sort of montage, the Wicker Man looking guy looks really cool. The medallion or sort of sun face thing on the front kind of looks like what um, what's his name, Dung Eater has on his armor. But if you notice too on that right hip, that looks like it's a giant face, either kind of stuck on there, maybe the giant's kind of stuck inside of the cage on the leg, so maybe that's where the fire's coming from. But it looks like this field boss, which it likely looks like, um, kind of has people stuck in it or whatever. Again, the whole fire motif. Maybe it's the same type of fire as what this main villain Mesmer has. We'll talk about that later, but this again just looks like a really cool field boss. I don't think there's really much for us to go off of at this point, but it does look really big and imposing. Kind of reminds me of the Wandering Mausoleums too. Maybe this is kind of has a similar element to that, where you gotta kill them in a certain way to get something inside of them. Maybe there's something inside of that basket, kind of like the mausoleums from the base game, but it could go either way. Just being able to fight it, I think, would be really cool. And speaking of cool fights, we have this guy, this sort of Chinese parade dragon type thing, except this kind of has this lion thing going on. You can see a lot of people have already pointed this out, that it kind of has this awkward move set or movement to it, where it's not kind of floaty, kind of in that manner, kind of like a puppet almost, like a like one of those Chinese um, dragon. I think Miyazaki referred to it as like a dragon, or sorry, like a lion dance enemy or something like that. I'll have to look at that again, but I think that's very similar verbiage to what he had described it as. So I don't think it's actually a lion, because again, we're seeing the two sets of teeth, but yeah, it looks like a really hard boss. Looks really scary, looks really imposing, and the fact that it kind of has, I don't think that's Death Blight attack that it's using. It's probably some kind of other breath attack maybe we haven't seen before. The fact that it has that going for it and the lightning is just like, one thing on top of another. Some people have said that it's Godwin or related to Godwin. I don't think so. I don't think we're going to see Godwin in this DLC, and we'll talk about that later. But I know I keep saying that. But yeah, the dragon, or I'm sorry, the lion dance enemy looks really cool. Kind of has those omen feet. Had to get the feet in there right. Looks really cool. But overall, it looks like not necessarily a lion, but rather sort of a costume that people are putting on. It looks like there's at least 2 or 3 people inside of the costume, or inside of the lion puppet, or whatever you'd want to call it. So yeah, probably one of the most unique bosses we've seen in a long time. It's not just this big monster, but sort of a play on costume and apparel in such an interesting way. So again, cool enemies, cool visual design. Really looking forward to seeing what this ends up being. But I know I'm probably going to have a hard time with this fight, because I can just tell that it's not going to be fun. In terms of feeling easy, it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. So it'll be fun. It'll be a fun challenge, but it's definitely not going to be a smooth sail approach. Not only for this boss, but pretty much all the bosses that are mentioned here look really imposing and really difficult. And here we finally get our friend from the collector's edition, the statue, which is referred to as Mesmer the Impaler. Mesmer or Mesmer. Um, I've seen different pronunciations, so I'm just gonna say probably waffle between both. Um, but yeah, this guy looks really imposing, kind of just like the previous boss mentioned. Likely to be the main villain of the DLC. The one thing I hope though is that he's not the final boss because again, I think that's really predictable. I think that's sort of played out. I hope that there's some kind of element where you expect him to be the last boss and then there's actually something else, looming in the background. I think he's definitely sort of the main threat or the main um, goal that the player or the Tarnished is working towards or defeating. But I think there's probably even something even worse than this guy because um, based on the past DLC trailers and whatnot, um, they've never really shown, revealed all their cards at once. So it's to me, it's unlikely that this is the final boss or the main, maybe the main boss or the main focal point, but I'm sure there's someone even way more imposing or scary than this guy. But this guy looks absolutely gnarly. A lot of people, this is probably the one interpretation that really rubs me the wrong way, is that people are saying that he's Rykard when he's young, which I don't see the relationship at all. We did get confirmation from Miyazaki that it is a child of America, but he didn't say who the father was, so it could be, someone completely different. I personally think that it's probably Radagon and Marika's third child together, alongside Melania and Mikola. I think this again kind of gives me Nameless King vibes, where this is the guy that nobody wants to talk about. Everyone struck him from history. Nobody wants to talk about him. He's a horrible dude. Um, so yeah, it's probably playing off that motif for sure, in my opinion. He's got the red hair like Radagon does. He's got that. He's got the fire, which could be, both of those things could be linked to giants. But the fire also, to me, either looks entirely new, or it's sort of a blood flame thing, kind of like Moog. But again, his figure kind of looks oddly enough like the cocoon in Moog's palace, so that could even be Mesmer, that cocoon that's in the palace, and maybe Moog stole the wrong cocoon or whatever. I don't know. Maybe that's sort of an imposter, or they're going to sort of rewrite that idea. Because what we see from Mikola, again, from that one shot, looks nothing like the cocoon. Again, he's, changing and morphing over time, so that could still be Mikola potentially. But to me, the anatomy or the way the hands definitely look more like this Mesmer guy that we're introduced to. But yeah, back to the idea of him being Rykard. I don't see it. Yeah, he's got snakes, but I think that's sort of an amalgamation or a byproduct of being completely 100% against the Erdtree. Maybe the snakes sort of surround themselves with people like that, kind of like Rykard, or associate themselves with those kinds of people. But I don't think that this is Rykard. That's probably the one interpretation that just rubs me the wrong way from what I've seen. Is I don't think it's Rykard. I don't think it's a younger Rykard. To me, that's just so. I don't know. To me, that kind of reads as fan fiction, if I'm being completely honest. And again, if you feel that way, no hard feelings. If that ends up being the actual truth, you can come back and say, hey, I told you so. But I really don't see the resemblance, because what we see from Rykard, he's a judge, he's a justiciar, that as he's described him. The way that this character is personified doesn't seem like he's a judge. He's gonna stab you. He's gonna impale you. That's why he's called the Impaler. He's not a justiciar. He's not a praetor, like Rykard is described. He's not this judgmental kind of person. It seems like he's just like, no, I'm evil. I've got my motivations. Like, he seems very intent on whatever he's going to try to do, which doesn't really scream Rykard or anything that's associated with Rykard in the slightest to me. So yeah, take with that what you will, but I don't think that's Rykard. The spear kind of looks like Mogwin's, the Mogwin sword spear a little bit. So again, that might tie into the Blood Flame thing. But overall, I think again, this is probably gonna go against our expectations. This is a new guy. He's not sort of this person we haven't heard of before. This is a new established person that'll probably get sort of implemented into the lore, kind of like how um, Yorshka was implemented into the lore, or Filianor from the Ring City DLC in Dark Souls 3. Um, that's probably what we're dealing with here. Hopefully, it's done a little bit better. I'm not really a fan of those characters because they kind of just showed up out of nowhere. So I hope that that transition is a little bit better. It probably will be, just because, again, a lot of these ideas, if you read the interviews, are sort of derived from what George Martin had written down previously in his mythos for the game. But it seems like a lot of this stuff is just the stuff that they didn't get to fully flesh out, or didn't want to flesh out at the time of the base game. So again, yeah, just to kind of sum up the thoughts on Mesmer, um, he's probably a new guy, probably not Rykard, probably has his own thing going for him, probably the main adversary for the DLC, but there's probably at least one or two bosses that are even more sort of on that level of, oh my god, this guy's insane. Maybe that's even Mikola. Maybe Mikola is actually going to be the real villain here, or sort of the climax villain boss, similar to Gale from Dark Souls 3's Ring City DLC, which I think would be really cool. So hopefully we kind of interact with Mikola in some aspect, or fight him. So, but we'll talk about him when he shows up. But for now, I think those are kind of my thoughts on Mesmer. Really cool character. Can't wait to see what that statue looks like in person. Looks awesome. Cool draconic armor esque thing he's got going on. The snakes kind of look kind of cute, as some people have noted, which is kind of funny. But yeah, overall his design looks rad. It looks awesome. Probably one of the biggest draws, at least for me visually, of the DLC is just this guy looks so cool. Okay, so then we just kind of get a montage of different enemies, different weapons. We're getting 8 weapon classes from this DLC: throwing knives, different curved swords that kind of change the grip, martial arts, probably even different kinds of spells. I hope that besides just sorceries and incantations, we're getting, a whole different kind of spell. Maybe these are sleep spells that kind of scale off different attributes. Maybe it's similar to how it works with intelligence and faith. Maybe there's one where it scales off both, kind of like the Golden Order ones, or the fundamentalist ones. I can't remember right off the top of my head, but those ones that um, Mikola did use it for a time, that Radagon also used. Um, but yeah, any additional spells and abilities are definitely welcome. These enemies look really cool. There's this sort of, a lot of this stuff also kind of reminds me of aspects of the Crucible spells and motifs. We see that porcupine hippopotamus move spell thing going on. We also see, shortly, the wings move from that the Crucible Knights do, which is really cool to finally see that and to hopefully obtain that. It looks like we can, since it's the player character doing that particular move. But yeah, it looks like that spell is putting people to sleep. Oddly enough, though, that the magic, besides the butterflies, that's completely unique to me. But the magic itself, those little bursts that come out, kind of remind me of what Elden Beast does, and what the, oh gosh, what's his name? Estelle does. With those kind of that space magic kind of thing. So maybe this is more space magic kind of fused with sleep. I don't know. It's probably not, but to me, that's just kind of what it reminds me of, is that kind of space burst magic kind of stuff. But yeah, anyways, that looks really cool. There's, again, cool armors. That guy that has the machine gun crossbow looks absolutely awesome. I have a character that um, is kind of like a just basic claymore type character that I have ready to go for the DLC. So I'm probably gonna switch to that armor from the um, the Caden Sellsword set. That's still my favorite set with the bucket helmet, the great helm. That with the great helm looks so cool. So I think that this new set that this person with the crossbow is wielding might be my favorite set in the entire game. I'm sure there's maybe even something that's cooler than that, but to me, that's the coolest armor set I've ever seen in these games. I'm really looking forward to getting that. Hopefully, I don't have to kill an NPC to do that. Hopefully, I don't have to see a cool guy meet and a sad end to get the armor. So, whatever the case may be, I'm really looking forward to um, grabbing that and putting that on some of my characters, particularly my strength build characters, my greatsword characters, stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to that. Um, Again, we're seeing more gravity magic with the pig Knight Rider guy. Um, Kind of looks like a tree sentinel type boss, or like sort of parallel to the draconic tree sentinel, but except it's gravity and he's riding a pig. Um, I don't know. I also feel like it would have been cool if there was one where they were riding a falling star beast, as a mount for a gravity knight type thing. But the pig looks cool. But I was just thinking like that would be really cool to see if one was riding one of those falling star beasts, like a really really small one, um, as a potential horse. There could be some really cool ideas there. But I'm sure that pig is gonna mess you up with some kind of gravity magic or something. But yeah, new spells, new again, more field bosses, more enemies, new armor types, new weapons, new weapon classes, all welcome, all you know appreciated. I above and beyond the fact that we're getting 8 different weapon types, or weapon classes, I should say, is really cool to see. Hopefully, a lot of these weapons are viable though, because there's some weapons that are really cool, but they absolutely suck. And I don't do challenge runs. That I usually just play the games normally. So hopefully there's some viability there, because I don't like it when I have a weapon that's cool and then it sucks after a couple of levels, and then I have to ditch it when I'm used to the move set and all that stuff. So um, yeah, all really cool stuff. And of course, I forget to mention this really grotesque enemy. It looks like a horse that's sort of melted to the ground, or the lake or cave that it's in. Kind of, again, a lot of people have said it looks like the Medir cave from Dark Souls 3. I can see the resemblance there, but I think a lot of that too is just um, just using similar ideas. But that enemy with the sort of like boomerang, orphan of Kos, type of weapon looks really cool. That's probably one of the most unique enemy designs I've seen from them. I mean, everything they do is absolutely incredible, but for some reason that particular enemy stands out to me. And for some reason, it just looks really freakish. It just looks really weird and kind of out of place, but also still kind of fits within the realm of Elden Ring. So looking forward to seeing what those things exactly are. To me, they probably look more like um, kind of how the different flowers function, where they're kind of a stationary boss and they kind of just throw things at you. I don't think, or I should say, enemy. I guess there are some boss iterations of that, but to me, that I don't think that's a boss. I think it's just like a normal enemy you want to avoid when you're running around the area. But it could very well be a boss. It just doesn't look like the most mobile thing in the world. So we'll see. But I just wanted to highlight that enemy in particular. It looks really cool. It looks really sort of otherworldly, from what we've normally used to seeing. And we see this guy again. This is the guy from the painting. He's pulling this, you know, barbed spear or sword from his eyeball. It looks like, or from his head, and it's sort of wedged into his entire body. He kind of has like, it looks like his body is hollow, kind of similar to how the troll's anatomy is. But again, it doesn't look like he's getting that thing out. I think his face looks a little bit more withered from what we saw in the painting. Even in the painting, he looked rather old, but this kind of he almost looks like a hollow or an undead kind of look to him. So I don't really know what to make of him. I don't know if he's going to be a boss or an enemy, or sorry, a boss or an ally, or some kind of NPC character. But to me, it's probably there's definitely some significance there. He has the same sort of robe and sort of buckle that keeps that robe together. It kind of has the motif of some people have been saying it's the Saint Trina torch. To me, it looks like the design of the Icer coat from the Rykard boss room. The one I think that also references Gideon. That design motif or that crest on that piece of armor kind of reminds me of his buckle or brooch or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that's definitely the same guy in the painting with the woman. Um, Again, I don't know how that thing got stuck in him, but one thing's for sure is if he were to keep pulling, he's going to pull his head off if he keeps going. So um, gnarly stuff. Hopefully that doesn't happen to us or the player character, because that's a gruesome situation to be in for sure. And of course, we're getting more Mesmer stuff. There he is in action. Looks like a very agile boss. He has that flame motif too. That move that he does with the spears is very similar to that one that the Clean Rot Knights do, where they kind of interact with the ground and all those spears kind of, you know, pop up. So maybe again, he is related to Melanian somehow in some shape or fashion. Excuse me. It could also just be simply that's just a move set. That's just part of what he is. But that's kind of what it reminds me of is that Clean Rot Knight move set, or particular move that they do with the golden spear shooting out of the ground. Except in this case, we're getting fire and those duplicates of his normal spear that he's wielding in his hand. Um, and again, we also see the player again with a new weapon type. This looks to be, I think some people have been calling it a duelist shield. It's like a twin blade with a shield on it. So interesting to see how that works. Is if it's like something that you have to two hand and then you can block with it, or there's specific Ashes of War for that type of weapon where you can block or shield bash, but then you can still stab with it and all that cool stuff. So um, yeah, that's a really cool weapon. And of course, we also see the aspects of the Crucible wings is probably what it's going to be called, or something like that. Hawk, maybe even. Um, Really cool move that a lot of people have been vying to get or acquire to some extent. Um, so yeah, that looks like a really cool move. But man, this boss looks really hard too. So I'm sure everyone's gonna have to get good for this guy, especially. Maybe even harder than Melania. I did see that Melania was referenced in the interview saying, where they were saying that there's going to be a boss or two that are like her in terms of difficulty, where it's like, here's the ultimate challenge you don't have to do. I don't think this guy's going to be an optional boss, but I do think he's going to be quite challenging just based on how he moves and how he, flows through combat. There's a lot of grab moves. Again, I absolutely hate grab moves, but I also like watching them. I don't like getting caught in them. I always tend to get caught in grab moves a lot, so I'm kind of seeing what he's doing with the grab moves is really cool. Again, I'm really looking forward to learning more about this character. He's really imposing, really, really cool. I don't know if that's him talking in that scene. Again, if he's referring to himself in the third person, that's a little cringe. But if it is, I don't know, because that could be him talking, but then in the scene previous with him, um, where he was saying, mother, how, such and such, I don't know if that's him talking either. It's kind of hard to tell. And a lot of people say that's him talking, but I don't know. Because I feel like the voice that plays in this part, it's saying like, succumb to Mesmer's flame or something like that. That voice seems more fitting to what he has to say. Maybe that voice previously that's talking to whatever this mother figure might be. Maybe that's Marika. That might be even Miquela's voice. Who knows? To me, that voice sounds more like Miquela, and then here, um, the person that's saying, "Fall to Mesmer's flame" or whatever verbiage they're using, um, seems more like Mesmer himself speaking. So, again, purely speculation, but that's my 2 cents on the dialogue there, along with some of those moves that we get to see more of, as well. And then, of course, lo and behold, we get the title again, the title Shadow of the Erdtree. Nothing really new there, except we get Miquela. It's implied that's Miquela, no question about it. No face reveal, of course. We'll see that shortly. Come June, we'll see that, what they look like. But yeah, Miquela could be a villain, could be, a friendly ally. We have really no idea what's in store with Miquela, which I am really excited to see because it could swing either way, or even the fact that we can take an approach: do we kill Miquela or do we spare them? That can also be a valid, idea there that might be possible as well. Because I think just based on that short scene, um, I don't think that it's entirely clear cut what it is they're doing. That to me looks like a boss cutscene. Um, I don't think that's the ending of the DLC. I don't think they would do that. I don't think they would show the final scene of the DLC or part of it in a trailer. I think that it could be a boss fight or some kind of reveal of Miquela, um, to some extent, because I think that sort of gesture towards the Erdtree, or I should say the Shadow of the Erdtree, um, is really interesting, and I think could swing either way. Maybe they're gonna bring some power with them with that light, or maybe they're gonna, do something that kind of alters the world state. Who knows? But again, I don't think that it's really entirely clear what side Miquela is on. Are they on our side? Because if you remember that Miquela, to some extent, wanted to be ruler. Again, I don't know if that was reluctant or not, but the fact that there's that going on with them, and then we as a player character, the Tarnished, are kind of seeking to be the ruler of the lands between, or at least the consort. There's definitely some competition going on there, so it'll be interesting to see where they, I should say, where their, um, sort of, um, interests lie. Are they actually on our side, or are they simply an adversary? Who knows? Um, but I don't think that Mesmer and Miquela are the same. I do really think that these two are siblings, and I think Mesmer is sort of the the disgraced member of the Radagon and Marika lineage specifically, where you thought Rykard was bad. Well, this guy's even worse, and Miquela's maybe trying to put him down or cleanse him. Who knows? But I don't think that Miquela and Mesmer are the same person. I think I've seen some interpretations like that. I don't think that's entirely true, um, but at any rate, that's definitely Miquela. That's the closest visual representation of them that we've gotten. That's pretty indicative of what we've seen in item descriptions and other, statues and other descriptions like that. So definitely for sure, Millicent, Miquela. I hope Millicent returns, to some extent. That would be really cool. I do hope we see some recurring NPC characters. So I guess that'll bring us to our final closing thoughts, on what I hope that this DLC entails. Because I don't think I'm going to talk really about the pre-order stuff. Looks like the same stuff, but basically just you get a different statue, you get a different art book. So I'm not going to go too much into detail there, but we'll go ahead and move on to what I'm looking forward to, and, kind of open the discussion up for you guys as well. As what do you look forward to when it comes to the DLC? What is something that you're interested in, or what is your crackpot theory? what do you think that's completely out of left field that doesn't really go with anybody else? Because I'm sure there are definitely some wacky ideas out there. I feel like I have some wacky ideas, but we'll get into that in this next section. So right off the bat, I'm just gonna say that this basically just looks like everything we could have asked for or wanted. Um, from what we know, the content is there. The area is likely to be the size of Limgrave, as Miyazaki described in the interviews that he recently did. I think that he's selling himself short. It's probably much bigger than Limgrave, or at least much more dense as they've described it. I don't think it's just going to be Limgrave. My prediction is I think there's going to be that plus an underground section. There's definitely a lot of sections that either appear as nighttime scenes or just, underground, especially with those Trina lilies that we saw earlier, um, as well as where that weird horse enemy was too. That seems like an underground area, so I think there might be like kind of what we saw with the Nox locations where there's the base layer, and then there's a second layer underneath the map where there's more stuff, kind of like also like the deeper depth too is another good example of that. So there's probably going to be some of that there. I don't think it's going to be just here's Limgrave with a bunch of dungeons, just a hop skipping away from each other. I think there's going to be a much larger landmass to work with than that. At least maybe the size of Limgrave plus Caelid, or Limgrave plus Liurnia or Altus, and then maybe perhaps even an underground area, or even a higher plane similar to what something like Farum Azula, but it's in the air, because we kind of saw that with the castle where it kind of spiraled off and kind of was starting to crumble towards the top, towards the sky, where we saw those large, massive veils or drapes, and people have been talking about those ad nauseum. Looks like America's Bedchamber. So I'm not going to go too much into detail there. But yeah, I think this is going to be a very large DLC. $40 is expensive for a DLC, but really this is an expansion. To me, this seems like Elden Ring, not 2, but Elden Ring maybe 1.5, where it's just like, screw it, we're not going to do another game. Let's just have another DLC that's the size of a large game. I mean, it wouldn't be too much of a surprise to me that there's no Elden Ring sequel, but instead we're getting this, where it's here's more game, here's more of the game that you guys love on a very large, substantive scale. And what it seems like the files are is, I think it's again, I play on Xbox, so I don't download from Steam or anything like that, but it looks like the Steam files indicate that it's around 60 gigs, and that's what I believe the base game is close to. If not, that's probably more than the base game. So with that in mind too, kind of gets me thinking, I hope that um, the game also kind of alters the base game, or I'm sorry, the expansion alters the base game in a way that kind of does something substantial with it if you do certain things, or just it's just part of the package. Because I feel like the lands between, or just the general base game is totally open to that. To me, sounds like, this looks like something like what Scholar of the First Sin did with Dark Souls 2. Hopefully it's implemented a little bit better, and I'm sure it will. Hopefully there's no enemy ganks, enemy ganks galore. But I think it's going to be something like that, where there's sort of some ideas or things rearranged either to fit the lore, or to present new ideas, or to hint at the DLC a little bit more, something like that. So I think there's going to be some changes to the base game. I don't think it's going to be drastically different, but I do think there's going to be some key additions besides just here's a teleporter in Moog Palace, go there. There you go. Here's a new area to explore. Kind of like what you would see from like The Witcher 3, where there's kind of these large land masses, but you kind of have to travel between them. It's like a pseudo open world, where it's like, here's open world pockets. I do think that a large part of the DLC is going to operate like that. That's how we're going to get there. It's just going to be here's a portal or ascending gate, kind of like what we saw with the Painted World DLC from Dark Souls 3. But I do think that there is going to be still some change to the base game. I at least hope that there is, because I feel like they could do some really interesting things with that. Some other things too that I was interested in is just I hope that these new weapon classes are also introduced to the base game as well. That way, if players really wanted to do, for instance, a duelist shield build, could do that earlier, but then maybe those duelist shields, like the best ones or the ones that you can get from remembrances that are super super special or super overpowered, or found solely within the DLC or something to that extent. Because I mean, by the time you're level 120 or whatever, from a just a single playthrough, not even counting those people that are on New Game Plus 7 and beyond, if you're trying to get into this DLC, it's like you're already married to this build. Are you really going to start over again? You're probably not. I mean, at least I don't think I would personally if I was in that position. I mean, I have a couple characters ready to go, so I don't feel like I'm going to just completely revamp my build. I might try some of these new weapons, but I'm not going to go and waste upgrade materials on them and not like them and kind of go outside of the build. I'll just go start a new character, make a new build from it. But again, I would like to probably see those weapons peppered throughout the main game so that you're kind of used to the move sets and kind of what to expect from them before the DLC starts. So then it's like, oh, I found more of these in the DLC and they're way better than the ones I found in the base game. I don't know. Again, that's just a hope of mine. I don't think that'll happen, but it could. But it is just something that I was thinking about when watching some of these interpretations and breakdowns of the DLC trailer. I've been talking for a long time, so my voice is about to give out soon, so try to drink some more water. Another thing too that I was interested in is just how the player progression works. Kind of again what I was mentioning earlier. These people that are playing the game, like they're probably some of these people are probably level 300 or something crazy like that, or level in the 200s, because they've played this game over and over again on the base game beyond New Game Plus 7. So it's like, okay, what is the preparation that From Software had to do to accommodate for that thing, to accommodate for that. It's like there might be some people that are max stats that have done it legit, they didn't cheat or anything like that, and they're going to go in the DLC and mop the floor with everything because they're max stats. I'm sure they have a plan in mind. I have that interviews, those interviews I should say, did kind of mention this potential, or this idea of the progression system is going to change, or there's going to be a specific progression system solely for the DLC. Kind of similar to some systems that were implemented into Sekiro. I haven't played that game. I know I should. I know it's blasphemy, but I haven't. I would like to someday. But it seems like they're borrowing some ideas from there, from what I've read, where player progression is more tied to not necessarily a level, but you get more powerful or do put out more damage or have more health, I think, because you're doing certain things, or you meet certain progressions or requirements, or do certain things, versus I'm just going to level up just like normally, like all the other games. So I'm interested in that, because I feel like then that still puts everyone at a level playing field when they play the DLC. It's just not like I'm level 200, I'm going to go play the DLC now, and I just beat the crap out of Mesmer because I was over leveled or whatever. But again, it does seem like an end game area for the most part, which kind of brings me to my next point, is that I was initially hoping that there would be maybe an end game area and then a sort of mid game area, so you don't have to start the game. If you want to start the game on a fresh playthrough, you don't have to go through the whole thing to get there. I mean, obviously, yes, you can go through kill Moog at a lower level and go do that. Hats off to the people that can do that. I have a really hard time with Moog. That's probably one of the fights I struggle with the most. So I usually have to kind of um, bulk up a little bit before I go fight him. Um, but yeah, that to me doesn't seem like a possibility. If you're just playing the game normally, I was really hoping that there would be maybe sort of an intermittent kind of area. Maybe that's after Altus or shortly before Altus that you could go to. That's linked to the expansion. Maybe you fight some bosses there. So I don't know, but it's hard to say. But to me, it looks like there's sort of that end game area, um, which I hope that the exploration is still there when I think about that, because I think the exploration starts to kind of get a little bit taxing when you're worrying about not getting squashed by something in one hit, you know. So it'll be interesting to see how the scaling works, since this looks like to be an endgame area. Are you going to be the one squashing everything because you're over leveled, or is everything going to be squashing you because they had to basically turn the dial up to 300 on all these enemies and bosses because there's no other way to accommodate for players at high levels after beating the game. So again, I don't really know, but that's just my thought. Is I'm sure they have it figured out. I'm not too worried about it. I'm just more than anything just curious to kind of see what's to be expected there. Um, and just again, some other things is I really do hope that we get more NPCs. I really hope that, and I think that's what's been indicated from the trailer is that a lot of these NPCs, at least they appear to be NPCs with the different dialogue and stuff. I really do hope that we get more interaction. Maybe we get something like a round table hold part two, where there's a second hub area that you can go and talk to people, and it's not just you know the odd chance that you encounter someone. I that was something I really sorely missed, because I feel like a lot of the encounters, at least in Dark Souls, you kind of, yeah, you had to do some obtuse things to get them to pop up, but for the most part, you couldn't go without seeing, Siegmeyer, Siegward. And I feel like with Elden Ring, the open nature of the world, you can completely miss people. Like, I didn't know for the longest time that um, Bernal was a weapons trainer before seeing them in Volcano Manor. I didn't put two and two together that they were the same person, because you go so long without seeing that other person. It's like, who the heck are you? It didn't click the first time. But also, I think that's part of the charm. So I think it's trying to walk a fine line between, do we show the player everything in their first playthrough, or do we hold some things back, kind of walking that balance. Because I do like playing these games over again and being like, I didn't know you could, see Millicent here, or, Nefeli Lou's quest, for example, was I didn't know where that went. She was always just stuck in Round Table Hold grieving, and then she would die at, when the Erdtree got burned up, I believe. And then one time I got her quest to, I actually, wanted to look up a guide and see, does she go anywhere after this? And I found out she did, and I did the whole quest with her and stuff. And then she shows up as a summon for Horaloo. So I think that was a cool discovery, or, replayability factor. So again, I think with the NPC stuff, I just hope that they add more, but also on some level make the interactions a bit easier to get started, or to kind of know where they're going to be. Again, if I don't know how anybody knows where people are going to be if they're not looking up a guide. I look up the guides because I want to talk to as many people as I can. I don't go out of my way to save every single NPC, but I try to at least get most of them there on a first playthrough or on a second playthrough, just so I can, you know, get to know these other characters and stuff that you interact with. So um, those are my thoughts on the NPC stuff. All the enemies, all the spells, all the weapon abilities, throwing pots, butterfly spells, you know, ninja kicking people, karate stuff, all super cool. All very Dark Souls too. To me, a lot of this stuff, and I've been doing a series on this, is all this stuff looks so Dark Souls 2, like, this has Yui Tenamura written all over it in my opinion. Like I think Yui probably had a lot to do with this to some extent. Like to me, these seem a lot like his ideas, which are a lot of the times I'm assuming are really outside of the box. So, um, or just very distinctly different from Miyazaki. And to me, that seems to be what's going on here. Again, I can be completely wrong. I don't know these people. I don't know. Um, but but to me, this a lot of this seems like Dark Souls 2 or just the stuff they couldn't do initially, which is really really exciting because um, I love seeing or learning more about these cut content from other games, and then boom, it's in the next game. And that seems to be a lot of what's here. I'm sure the story will be amazing. I'm sure all that stuff will be fantastic. Complicated. I'm sure it'll be very complicated and convoluted. That'll take, you know, the the time it does to dissect a novel or dissect a large series of books, um, or just watching tons and tons of audio video videos. Who knows? Um, but yeah, that stuff I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to the lore. I'm sure the characterization is going to be great. I'm sure the boss fights are going to be fun. But again, I do worry for the DLC in that regard simply because I do think the end game of Elden Ring is there's some bosses that I will be upfront to say I absolutely struggle with, and I just hope that not every boss is just like this, you know, whirlwind of just combo after combo after combo like Malekith or something like that just literally just doesn't stop. I mean, as someone who really likes just doing basic claymore builds or something like that, again, I'm not the most skilled player. I've beaten Dark Souls 1 through 3 on soul level 1, and yeah, that was really hard. I did it. I don't think I could ever do that with Elden Ring. It's just the never-ending combos I think start to wear on me personally throughout the late part of the base game. So I hope that there's some bosses that I think that are really still very well designed but aren't just like these mountains of difficulty. I think a good example that I really like is I really like the Erdtree avatars. They're not the most mechanically complex bosses, but I really love fighting them because they're so satisfying to dodge and you kind of know what they're going to do for the most part. So I want hopefully bosses like that are sort of like middle tier, that they're not just like, okay, let's just do everything. Here's 10 Gales at once, or here's Godskin Trio. Hopefully not. But I just hope that there's sort of this balance between how the bosses are managed, where we get some more fair introductory bosses, and then if you really want the challenge on the end, you can go do the optional BS Melania fight, BS Madeir fight. I hate those two bosses so much. I know everybody loves them. I can't stand them. Um, so I hope there's something for everybody. Otherwise, because I don't really like to use the meta builds initially. I like to go back and use that stuff. Like I usually like to use something very basic like a sword and board or a great sword, and that's it. Um, and to me, I feel like Elden Ring struggles with that, where it really favors the meta, or it really favors certain affinities or different damage types. I mean, if you're playing a holy character at the very end of Elden Ring, then in the base game, you're screwed. I mean, you're absolutely screwed, and that's what I recently did. And I had to basically, I just got so fed up with, Malekith. I had to change my build entirely to like a fire build, and it's like, well, way to break my immersion. I had this whole character planned out, and that kind of had this cleric kind of vibe. So it's just stuff like that that I hope that is sort of balanced or retweaked. I do also hope that there's some retweaks or balances to the base game as well, or some adjustments. I hope. I don't think there's going to be, but if there is, I would really appreciate that, because I do think, to me, everything after the fire giant is just really tough, save for I do think like Horaloo is pretty fair, but and I do like Gideon too, even though he's just kind of a silly boss. But everything like Melania, Moog, um, Malekith, I don't really like those bosses mechanically. Um, I like Radagon and Elden Beast and stuff like that. Those two have grown on me surprisingly over time. Um, but again, I just hope that every boss isn't just like, combo, 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 and that's, I kind of saw that from the lion boss or the lion dance boss. And so I'm a little bit slightly concerned. I know I just need to get good and I need to, not complain so much or, just, literally just get good and it'll be fine. But I just hope that every boss doesn't rely on that. It's not just, I honestly hope that there's a gimmick boss or two in there as well. Um, I love the gimmick bosses. That's why I like Dark Souls 1 and 2 so much, is because every boss is kind of weird and clunky. So I hope that there's some acknowledgement of that. Even if it's just one boss that's like that, I think that would be really, really cool to see and kind of really flip the script. Because again, by the end game, we're dealing with, these heavy hitters that are just nonstop whirlwinds of of fighters. So I would really like to see some stuff that's kind of in between, or kind of like, here's just a dude on a pig horse. Like, yeah, he's kind of hard, but if you just pay attention, you're cool. It's not like this, rhythm memorization stuff that has to take place, you know, stuff like that. Something that's just simply satisfying to fight that you might get on the first or second try, versus like, okay, we're gonna turn the dial up to 11, and not only does this boss heal when they hit you, but they also poison you and death blight you, and they also have a laser beam that you know halts you and doesn't allow you to move. If you get caught in it, you're screwed. Whatever. I hope there's no stuff like that. I hope it's still, again, the motto of hard but fair. I hope that's still there, and I'm sure it will be. Um, because I do think, in my opinion at least, I think there are a few outliers in the base game that really test that aspect or quality. And I mean, even like bosses that I hate, like Malekith, I'm getting better at. I can beat in like 5 tries versus 20 with my recent Great Sword playthrough that I've been doing. I think it took me like 5 or 6 tries versus I did a sword and board one against him, and I think it took me about 20 tries. And again, this is without summon. I want to be able to feel like I can beat these guys without having to rely on Mimic Tier. At least maybe I'll do Mimic Tier the first time, and then the second time I'll that's what I usually do. Is I like to use summons just to play around with them. But then when I really want to get invested in the move sets, then I'll go back, because I like to just play the games normally and just chill, and then I like to get a little sweaty about it in later playthroughs. So that hopefully takes place. But yeah, again, a lot of this stuff is just really, really, really interesting to me. I don't really have any complaints other than simply I am kind of bummed out that the entrance is literally just where everyone thought it would be. I was hoping for maybe something a little bit different. Again, not even obtuse, but just something different than what the community was expecting. That, and then my whole tangential boss rant I just had. Again, I hope it's hard but fair. But other than those two concerns, I'm absolutely 100% on board. I want to fight Mesmer. I want to meet Mikola. I want to throw pots at people. I want to, learn more about, that red sword dancer woman that looks absolutely awesome. I want to try some of these new weapon classes. I want to see what that line is all about. I want to know who those people in the painting are, because I keep going back to thinking about those people in the painting. Um, I want to know just kind of what this world is. Is it the actual Erdtree, or is it a different Erdtree? Is it Mikola's Erdtree that another attempt? What is all this stuff? There's just so much mystery to it that I'm so excited to take a look at it. So, yeah, this video went way longer than I expected. But I hope that there's some interest, um, on your end, some of these ideas. If hopefully this video helped to, give you some new food for thought, give you some new ideas to work with. I've been, nonstop checking this this trailer out and looking at what other people are saying, just trying to expose myself and get acquainted with some of the ideas or consensus that these people are arriving at, and it's just absolutely all over the place. Some stuff really upsets me, and some stuff I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that before. So, but that, I think, again, that's what makes these games so interesting and so compelling, is that you can really interpret it in so many different, unique, and interesting ways. So, again, thank you again for, if you've made it this far listening to my rant, or if you fast forward and just wanted to hear this part or whatever. I really do appreciate it, because it it means a lot that you'd listen to a small channel like me do something like this, where I'm just gonna yammer on for, probably, this is probably gonna just be maybe even an hour of just me straight up talking. I'll have to see once I edit it. I mean, this clip that I am recording right now is already hitting the 25-minute mark. Um, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, again, thank you so much for taking a look at the video. Thank you for checking it out. It really means a lot to me. I will be continuing my series on Dark Souls, or sorry, Elden Ring is Dark Souls 2. I'll be taking a look at the parallels between those two games. So if that interests you, feel free to check those out. I have done a few videos on other games, but right now I'm kind of focused on the From Software stuff. Probably will be for the foreseeable future until the DLC comes out, and then I might start branching out into other stuff. I want to start doing some more Halo stuff. I want to start doing some more Resident Evil stuff. Just again, those are the kind of games I've been playing recently, so I really want to dive into some other stuff. But for right now, I'm all in on FromSoft, mostly Elden Ring, and stuff like that. So yeah, thanks again for watching. I really do appreciate. Um, Drop this video a like if you'd like. If you liked it, even if you disliked it, if you hate my video editing or you don't like my ideas, dislike it. I always appreciate any kind of feedback. Feel free to leave a comment if I missed something, or if you want me to take a look at something, bring something to my attention. I think that stuff's really cool, so let me know about that. I might even make a second video that's a little bit more concise, where we talk about some stuff, or I just kind of make a part two with some rehashed or reevaluated ideas. So um, that might be a possibility as well. But anyways, I won't keep any more take up many more of your time. So thank you again, and hope to see you in the next one. And we did it. We finally made it to the end of the, what is it, second Great Halloween. We actually made it this far, and it's here. We have a release date, and couldn't be more excited for this, for a DLC, not even a game, but literally a DLC that's basically the size of a game. Let's be real. So um, I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully you are too. Feel free again to leave your thoughts in the comments, and we'll catch you again soon. Stay tuned for more of my Elden Ring content, and see you in the next one.